Welcome to the Marriage Masterpiece Show, where couples or individuals share their stories about life in an interracial marriage. I am your host, Jamie Core, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking to my friend Rebecca. Rebecca is a white woman from Missouri, and her husband, Gonzalo, is from Peru. They have been married for almost 5 years, and they just had their first beautiful baby girl. Thank you for joining me today, Rebecca.
My pleasure. It's great to be here. Thanks for asking.
Absolutely. So let's get into the first question. And for those who don't know or haven't heard your story, tell us just like a brief 2-minute version of how you guys met.
Oh man, we'll have to go back about 7 years to 2013. I met my husband. I was a technical recruiter for a tech consulting agency, and my job was to find software developers online, like through LinkedIn or any of those other professional networking sites, and then build relationships with them to potentially place them in job opportunities. And so I found I was doing my daily routine of looking through LinkedIn and finding out, who are the people I haven't contacted and who can I build new relationships with as I was a new recruiter. I was probably 5 or 6 months into the job. And then I contacted him, I messaged him. He had just moved from Florida to the St. Louis area. And, he had the skills I was looking for to put in potential with some of my clients. And I reached out to him and said, would you meet me at lunch? And we agreed on an Applebee's in the St. Louis area. And we sat down, and through the course of the conversation, getting to know a little about him professionally, but also personally, we found out we both Latin dance. So we both did salsa dancing, bachata dancing. I was on like a showcase team in the St. Louis area, very heavily involved in the St. Louis dance community. And I'm a very extroverted, friendly person. So I invited him out thinking, hey, you're a new person in the area. You like to dance. You don't know anybody. Hey, we're having this dance get together, hangout, social later this week. It's on Friday. Here's my phone number. You have it. If you would like to come, just let me know. No pressure. I didn't think he would contact me. I wanted to make sure he felt like there was no pressure, but he ended up texting me, and then we found out, he actually came to the dance social, and then we got to dance together, and we had great dance chemistry. And then from there, we just started hanging out. We became dance partners. And then we kind of, just our relationship blossomed through that dance partnership, and got to really know each other and trust each other. And then now we're life partners, marriage partners, and now we're raising a beautiful little girl together. So it's funny how that happened. That's the start of that's how we met and fell in love.
That is so cool. And I love talking about interracial marriage and talking about some of these differences that we have with our cultures. I love that you are already immersed in a huge part of his culture and you loved it, and it's something you did already, and then you got to, merge together with him in that.
It was really cool because I took several years of Spanish in high school, and I always had a big love for the Spanish language, the Hispanic culture. My parents did a really good job from the time we were very young. We went to a multicultural church, so it was like 50%. It was close to, I don't know the exact percentiles for those of you who are very, very precise on the channel. But I would say there was a significant amount of African Americans, Asian Americans, people who had just immigrated from the United States, Caucasians, people from all over. And so when I was a young girl, I was exposed to individuals of all different cultures. And, I never thought it was strange that, many of my friends did not look like me, did not talk like me, were not raised like me, but it was just something I was exposed to. So, that kind of transcended through my entire life and how I've always treated relationships and treated people. And it was really fun that, I'd always already had an established, at least basic foundation of Spanish, knowledge of the culture and love for dancing. And that kind of, just was a natural bridge that brought us together. So, yeah.
Wow, I love it. So with that, you already had a little dabble, in his culture, in his language, which is a huge foundation and setup. I'm going into marriage now. So for me, 3 years in, I have learned that there are some cultural differences. There are some cultural norms that he has and his family has that are not norms for me. And so with some of those differences, my question for you is, how did you learn some of those differences? Was it early on? Did it take some time and you just saw some of the little things that he did differently? Or how did that look like for you in your marriage?
Sure. So I think one of the biggest, most pronounced things that I've noticed between the American Caucasian culture that you and I are part of, Jamie,
Yeah.
and the Hispanic, Latino, Peruvian culture, that's especially, I've seen it in his family too, or it's kind of the difference between the perception of owning personal space and items. And so in my family and the way I was raised, and in our culture, I'm sure, maybe I don't know if you can identify this, but if you come to somebody's house, even if it's your family member or relative, if you want to borrow something that's outside of the general, like, hey, I want to go and borrow a coffee cup from your counter, and it's in your, it's in a drawer, I'm going to ask you for permission before I ever go and assume I can just go take something, right? That's, if I went to your house and started going through your cabinets and grabbing a coffee cup, that might be a show as a sign of disrespect in the American culture, at least in my house. That's the way I was raised. Now, in Hispanic culture, it's a little, I've noticed with friends and with his family, it's very much more, we don't own the things. Anybody who needs something, just go get it. You don't need to ask for permission. You just go take, because you're part of our family. And if you ask us, it's a little bit of strange and off-putting. Maybe you're not comfortable enough here to feel like family, because the cultural, and I don't think the American culture is inhospitable, but it's just at a different level of openness and vulnerability, I think, with your friends and your family. And you can see that evidence just with people, you have close friends, lifelong friends, you call them primo, prima, tia, tio, which are cousin and aunt and uncle, for people that are not your blood relation, which is, it kind of is this blurred lines, these beautiful blurred lines of who is, your friends versus your family. They kind of mesh together. So I think that's a beautiful, beautiful difference that I think is great to experience. It's different, but it kind of puts me out of my comfort zone, but it's a beautiful difference.
I have seen that too, where there's total, yeah, it's very inclusive. This is something my husband and I talk a lot about, is the inclusivity as well, when everyone's invited. And I don't know if you relate to this, but in the Caucasian American culture, when you send out an invite, that person is invited to something, whereas in the Hispanic culture, everybody's invited, and invite your grandma, invite your friend, invite your cousin.
Bring whoever you want, and whatever we have is yours. And so you can meet some of the people who have some of the least amount of resources, but they have the most abundant mindset. And that's something we can learn, is that instead of trying to conserve your things and not share, it's a very generous spirit of just being able to give all you have and give the best of what you have with no inhibitions. That's beautiful.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
have seen that too, even if a certain family doesn't have a lot, because of their culture is so tight knit, they're going to take care of each other. And
Yeah.
that's something that, I'm not saying that my family wasn't going to take care of other people. I just didn't grow up with the white culture in America. Doesn't,
No.
it's not the same, you're my people, and I'm going to be there for you no matter what. Is this
Yep.
beautiful, like, all Hispanics are family, and I just love getting to learn that they're going to take care of their people.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, it's a different level of sometimes you see this in not necessarily my family, but I've seen this in the United States. It's in Caucasian culture. It's like there's an obligation. If you're family, there's people don't necessarily want to be with you, but they have to because you're related, and that's the expectation. That's a big difference between, just the warmth and outpouring you will see, a lot of times in Hispanic culture. And not, I'm, when you use generalizations, you got to be careful, but that's something I've definitely, I've at least seen some of.
That's true. Very, very good. Okay, so in this process of adapting and learning my husband's race and his family background, and same as you, um, learning some of these differences, I have had some questions. And for a while, I was really nervous to bring those questions up. I was concerned of who to ask, out of fear of offending or coming across racist or offensive, which I would never want to. I just had questions. But the fact is, there are differences. It's a real thing. We just went, talked about some of those differences. And so even in family upbringings within a certain ethnic group, there are differences. And so marrying into a different culture, we do need to learn what those differences are so that we can adapt and learn and learn to embrace this beautiful new life that we've stepped in. And so for me, I don't have to learn Spanish, but it would be extremely beneficial from my experience with my extended family. Some of his family doesn't speak English. And so it would be really beneficial for my experience, you know, embracing his culture and his family. And so coming from that perspective where there really are differences, could you
Mhm.
share some of the questions that you had stepping into the Hispanic culture and the ways you had to learn to adapt? And then how did you learn to adapt to your husband's culture and norms, and what were some of those differences?
I'm trying to, yeah, no, good question. I'm trying to think of like a specific situation. Personally, I'm pretty intuitive. That's part of my personality. And so I can pick up on very minute or subtle like social hints or like things. And so usually I can kind of figure it out pretty quickly about, you know, what makes people uncomfortable, what makes people happy, where is a boundary that people prefer, and try to respect that. But I think some of it might have had to do around with the, borrowing of things. Like, when I first, it kind of goes back to there. That's something that's very foreign to me because I was raised to be very polite and very, never take anything for granted. And, I grew up in a family of 4 girls, and now I have a brother, so there's 5 of us. But I grew up in a nuclear family of 4 girls. And so, you're kind of protective of your little things that you have. And, you don't want your sisters just taking them for you. And so just kind of that perspective of, anything that we have is yours it's definitely like, it kind of shatters a little bit of I didn't realize I was selfish, but like, kind of like, what am I willing to give to those I love? Am I willing to just be relaxed with like that? And so that's been something I've had, just internally. And then, making sure I'm not offending his family if I just assume I can take like a pair of his mom's shoes into the closet or something, that feels very foreign to me, but it is what it is.
That's really good insight. So with you, I only took like a year and a half of Spanish in high school, but with you taking a few years, do you feel that you were set up for success more with understanding this culture and understanding obviously the language? And then you said that your personality is more intuitive, where you can just pick up on things, social norms, and probably the language and communication as well. So I'm guessing that set you up for success. Do you think that you were able to kind of pick up on certain things and not have, I guess my question is not feeling so, how do I ask these questions, or feeling nervous, but that you just kind of had more peace leaning into picking up some of these differences?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really great question, Jamie. I think it kind of goes back to, when you meet somebody that's a really good fit for you, it just, it's just who you are, and you become one, right? When you get married. I think but his family says, especially when we first got married, it's like Rebecca is is a Latina at heart. Like she is like, I think they perceive from what the feedback they've given me is that I have a lot of the characteristics that a lot of Latinos do, like, and generalizing again, but I love family, I love dancing, I love food, I love, good times, I like, just I'm a little more outgoing, and those are all things that are, I think, what I've seen when his family gets together. And so I just naturally, like the person who I am, I feel like I just fit in well. The language, understand, at least having a foundation of the language certainly helped, as well as a respect for his culture. But even before I met him, for many years, I've always immersed myself with individuals that are way different from me. From, working with international affairs in college, I used to tutor students from the Arabic, a lot of different Arabic countries, Chinese countries, China, sorry, not Chinese country, China. Ooh, I don't know where that came from. And just from all over the world. And so I think, it was just very natural for me to seek a relationship with somebody, from a different culture, but also just the incredible person who he is, and the value my husband brings to my life is he's a true partner. So yeah, it was pretty same. I mean, I think if I had more of a reserved personality that wasn't comfortable, or I wasn't already exposing myself to so many different kinds of people and preferring that, I actually, I think I like being friends and meeting people who are different from me, because they teach me so much, and they help me to grow as an individual. And I definitely know that there are so many people out there in the world who have so much to teach me and I can learn from. And so I crave that experiences. Why would you want everyone around you to be like you? Because that's like living in a vacuum of your own thoughts. And that's where a lot of bad things happen. So it's good to be with, with him and people like him or other people that, help you think and challenge your way of being. And, is it the right way, or is there multiple ways to solve something or experience something?
That's really, really great. And I'm the same as you. I grew up in a church that's very diverse, and I had close friends from all backgrounds and all different cultures. And so it wasn't until getting married and even more recently with some things that are going on,
Yeah.
being aware of, I'm not saying that I didn't see color, because color is beautiful and culture is beautiful. And I loved going to my friends' families' African parties and eating Ethiopian
Yes.
food. Oh
Yes.
my
Yeah.
goodness. It's sometimes I'm like, this is has so much more flavor than my food that I grew up on. But so learning to, I mean, obviously always loving it, but then stepping into marriage can be a little bit different. And so I see for other couples, I just want them to be aware, as they're stepping into dating or an engagement or getting married, that it is different once you get married, because you do marry their family and you bring this culture in, and it is so fun. It's such a blessing. And so I want to encourage other wives and other couples to the learning process. There can be difficulties, sure, but it's
Absolutely.
such a blessing. There's so many benefits. And I love that you're sharing that you get to learn. I never want to stay closed-minded. I never want to think my way is the only way, but other family backgrounds, other cultures have other ways of doing things. And it's been really fun to pick up. And I think you're saying the same.
Absolutely. I think, it all comes down to, really, I mean, before the culture, it's always the person. Like, for me, he was the right fit for me. He just happens to be Peruvian. If he came in an African package or a white package or an Asian package, I don't, that is secondary to who he is, his character, the value he brings in my life, and the value I bring to his. And so he's just an incredible person. That's his package he comes in, just like I come in a Caucasian package. You don't pick your package. It's and so I think, that's, his culture is definitely a blessing, but I think first and foremost is just his incredible, who he is as a person.
I love that you said that. I mean, you're so right. It is the person first. And I fell in love with Jonathan before I even knew his family. So thank you for saying that. That's really, really good insight, that it is the person that you're choosing to love and you're choosing to partner with and do life with. That
Yeah.
if you're a good fit, everything else is just a bonus. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so the first time I hung out with my husband's extended family, it was at my house. I hosted his sister's baby shower. We had just started dating a couple months, and my parents had a nice house, bigger house, and so I said that I would host, and I was excited. And so as everyone's showing up, it was so fun, and I got to experience the music, and there's a lot going on in the different language, and so there's a lot of things different going on. And this was the first time that I was experiencing his family and extended family. So with that, um, granted, now I love it. I mean, it's one of my favorite parts, is just there's so much going on. There's kids everywhere. I'm way more acclimated to it now, but it did take some time to be used to it, to get used to it, and to learn those things. So can you share how the first family reunion or family get together was for you, stepping into this different culture? What was that like? And granted, you were already dancing and you were already around the culture, but with your husband's, because again, like you said, we don't want to generalize. So with your husband's family, what was that like stepping in?
It was very refreshing. So, go back to our original conversation of like everybody's family, everyone's invited, no one is left out. There's not a sense of clickiness. You know what I mean? There's sometimes in white culture where they're very clicky, and if you're not a part of the official family, or you're not welcome, and it's like kind of a cold onset. That is not the case at all. And I had always wanted and prayed really for a really great relationship with my husband's family, because when you marry somebody, you marry not them, but you are, especially for family oriented people, which we are, you marry the whole family. And that relationship with your in-laws and or at that time, your potential in-laws is very important. And so from the very beginning, his mother, his father, his cousins, his aunts, his uncles, everyone has treated me with the most kind, sincere and genuine openness and kindness, accepting me who I am. I never felt different. I've never felt like they treat me any differently. I'm just part of the family from day one. And that's such a beautiful and very rare experience. I think for a lot of people, even when they marry somebody from their own culture, it can be very challenging, but they have treated me nothing less than first class. So very, very special people, and they're my family. So yeah, it was a great experience. I can tell you, once we told them all we were expecting our daughter, they were through the roof. I think there was even some questions before we got married of like, when are you guys going to have kids? Because Hispanic culture, they love family and children, and we're like, whoa, we're gonna wait. And we did our world traveling and got our careers established and everything else before we had Gianella. But they're just a hoot. They're great. So yeah.
Isn't it the most amazing and beautiful blessing that they accept you as their own? I mean, my mother-in-law, sometimes I feel like she is more excited than my own mom. And my mom is wonderful and she loves me, but just like, oh, here's my daughter, here's my extra daughter. And I know that not every couple gets to experience that. And so my heart goes out to couples that maybe don't have great relationships with in-laws or with spouses, but I pray that comes. I pray that as you are yourself and you learn to love and serve, that does come for you, for other couples. But for us, it truly is a blessing that we were so blessed being welcomed and celebrated as another daughter, as another cousin and sister. And it's a huge gift.
It's just like, there's always room for one more family member there. It's fantastic. And my mother-in-law doesn't have any daughters. And she's she does nails and hair and eyelash extension. She's an esthetician. And so I think she's a very feminine, wonderful, beautiful woman. And, having two boys, and now she gets a daughter, and, I just feel very loved by her, very cared for by her. And it's a beautiful experience. So for sure. Yeah.
I love it. That makes me so happy for you. Okay, so talk to me about spousal roles, the expectations of spousal roles within your different culture backgrounds, and how they've played out in your marriage.
Oh, it's funny. So here's a funny thing. I'm going to talk about the stereotypical, what you think of Latino versus in American gender roles, at least of today, and then when it actually plays out too. So in American culture, I think stereotypically, or what we see now, is more of hopefully going towards more of an evening of, more of a partnership, as opposed to men only do this and women only do this. And then, and also traditionally, I think, so we've seen some of that move in the American way, but in the Hispanic culture, traditionally, it's been very, patriarchal, as far as like the woman is there in the kitchen and taking care of his children, and the man is out working and doing his thing. That is, what I think people might think of in their mind if they think of American versus Hispanic, South American culture. The way it plays out in ours, it's just funny, is that I was raised with first of all, I come from a very wonderful family. They're fantastic, and my mother is a professional mother. This woman, if you ask her if you ask her how to do anything around the house or how to take care of children, she will know it. And she's a trained engineer. She has her engineering degree, but she became a stay-at-home mom when she had me, and now that I'm a mother, I realize how much of a sacrifice, how much like love she has for us. Like, I always knew she loved us, but I never quite got it until I became a mother. I'm sure many moms who are watching this will identify with that. And and so my mom and my dad, once we came along, they really did kind of stick to the traditional gender roles of, my mom stayed at home, very intelligent, very capable woman, but she gave her best and still gives her best to her children, which is a beautiful thing. My father has had a fantastic career, and, he has been very fulfilled and very focused on that mindset. So my parents have been more of the traditional gender roles, and that's where I was raised. My husband, on the other hand, I think his mom has worked and his dad has worked. And so there's been a little bit more of that, I think, split in the traditional sense. And so coming into our marriage, we are kind of still figuring this part out, because I have been very invested in my career. I love my job. I love what I do. It has given me a lot of fulfillment, and him as well. We both, have been very blessed to find things professionally that align with our passion, our talents, our interests, and give us a lot of fulfillment. And so, you know, having our daughter, I have a really wonderful 20-week maternity leave, which I'm currently on week 8. And so going through that together has been such a beautiful journey. It's been a little bit challenging for me because I'm a perfectionist. I want to be perfect at everything I do, perfect mom, perfect at work, perfect at anything, you know. But he has been so supportive and said, you know, whatever you want to do, whether it's, you know, work full time, work part time, you know, work and stay at home, I 100% support you, and we will figure out what that looks like, you know, financially and, you know, schedule wise and raising our daughter. So our marriage, I really truly believe, is very much a partnership. So and that's the way I think it's partly personality too, is that we both are we don't love being in conflict with other people. Like, it's not our preferred outcome. So and we truly care for each other. So we want to find the best solution that's going to make our whole family thrive. And so we're still navigating that. We haven't come to the 100%. I think we have an idea of what we want to do, but we are not 100% sure. But I would say, to boil all this down, is that it's really a partnership between the two of us, and we evolve as we are together longer and as we grow as people. So it's good.
Yeah, that's great. And it sounds like too, it can look different in different seasons, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Because you both were working and now you have this time with your daughter, which is so exciting and a blessing. And then as your husband is so respectfully and wonderfully giving you, you know, options, and you both are having to discuss and navigate what that looks like moving forward, especially if you know, move into having more kids down the road. So having what that looks like in different seasons could change. And
Absolutely.
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting because as you go through life, you cannot be married to one vision of yourself. You have to be okay with questioning and evaluating and seeking God on what the decision, the right situation is for your family. And there is no one right way for everyone, right? We're all different people. We're all different individuals. And I'm a true believer that if I'm a fulfilled, happy, peaceful a woman as an individual, I'm going to be a much better mother. So part of that investigation is, you know, what is that for me? And to never do things out of fear of what people will think, or fear of, am I making a wrong choice, and living in fear. We can't make decisions out of fear. So part of this season that I'm in right now has been trying to slow down and really listen to, you know, what is the next step and what's the call of the Lord on my life, and not trying to make decisions out of what I think will impress people, or what am I scared to lose on, or, you know, and that sort of thing. And so that's a natural for me. I'm a planner. I want to make a decision and move out and have a 10-point plan about where we're going to go from point A to point B. That's who I am. But learning to just kind of sit and be silent and be peaceful, it's hard on me, but that's what needs to happen for me to walk into the next stage of my life with confidence and peace, and make sure I know without a shadow of a doubt and believe that my daughter and my family will thrive, and I will be good. We will be good. So that's where we're at right now.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I just was gleaning so much because I am the same. I can be such a perfectionist. It is not my forte to be at peace and to be easygoing. That is one of my biggest prayers. I'm trying to learn that. I'm working on that. So, and I don't even have kids yet, but if it was my choice, our house would be immaculate all the time.
Yep.
And, you know, just everything. And so just the fact that you're learning to be at peace and taking the Lord's strength and ask him what that looks like in each season, I commend you. I think that's amazing. And I truly am going to go back and take notes on that. And I know that you're learning as well. And it's going to take the rest of our lives to grow, and we evolve and we become, you know, I don't think we ever arrive in who we are in our identity, because we become a spouse, we become a mom, we'll one day become grandparents, hopefully. And throughout that, we become friends with different people. And like you said, especially traveling or having friends from different cultures, we're constantly learning and growing and hopefully evolving. And so becoming more like Christ. And so with that, being at peace and steadfast in who we are in each season I think is the goal, is the journey.
Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest things we can learn to do, one of the hardest things, but one of the most fulfilling things, is surrender, right? It's so when you I know for me, what I want to go to is, do I have a plan? What am I going to do with this? And if that fails, what am I going to do next? And, how am I going to achieve my life goals? I think God just sits up there and laughs at us sometimes, because we're like hamsters on a wheel, instead of just trying to, like, letting him do the work and opening the doors to the opportunities. And I think as I get older, it's just learning that he made me a certain way. I accept who I am. I love who I am. But he can refine us. And that's not through me doing more work. It's through me sitting and trying to be just open to hearing his voice and being more at peace, because he's making us and making the opportunities happen to make us stronger and better people. And, that's just the season I'm at right now, is sitting sitting in the silence. And that's hard.
Yeah, it is.
Good.
Hard and good, all of the above. Yes, that's good. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so in the resting and in the asking God for guidance, my next question is, what have been some of the biggest challenges that you have faced bringing in two different cultures, if you don't mind sharing, and what has helped you get through those challenges?
Sure. So, I don't know if it's so much the cultural piece. I think this transcends culture. This is a personality thing. So anybody who's married, I'm sure will identify somewhat with this, is that when you mold two different people with two different personalities, two different perspectives, two different needs, that can be challenging. For me, what fills me up is a lot of time, like quality time with people, especially my spouse, and having one-on-one time with him, as well as some other things. What he really truly, needs as a person, this came out of understanding, being together a while and having some significant conversations, is that he needs time to do his hobbies. So, and the way this came out is that, I was asking him when we were pregnant, I asked him, what are you going to miss the most? We're very excited about becoming parents, but are you fearful of anything, or like, our life's going to be changing dramatically? And I thought, for me, it was like, less time together, less time to, less ability to go and just travel the entire world without worrying about our children. Those are things we like to do. Just being able to pick up and decide within 30 minutes, we're going to go and dance that night. And he told me, and I quote, "less time for my hobbies," which is, he plays, he's incredibly gifted and brilliant. He plays chess. He's a very big into videography and photography. And so he's very into that. And he plays guitar beautifully. And so he's a man of many talents. He's a jack of all trades. And he's very invested in his hobbies. And I'm not just saying he just does, a little tinkering. He will invest fully into whatever he's focused on for hours on end until he's perfected it to such a high level. And that to him is very, very important. And so for me to love him has been giving him that space and not taking it personally if he doesn't want to go do something together. And so learning that, I'm not going to be offended if he wants to go and spend some significant alone time focusing on these things, because that's what fills him up as a person. And so I think that was probably something that was a little more challenging for me to get at first, but now that's part of me loving him. So.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think for me going into marriage, I know that I was a little bit more starry-eyed. My husband's my first boyfriend, so he's
so cute.
He's my first everything. So I think in my mind, I still had this little girl, we're going to hang out and be best friends, which we are. But it's been so good for me to learn. We still have, our friends. I still have my girlfriends. He has his guy friends. Your husband sounds so similar to mine. I listened to your husband playing guitar. He is so good. My husband's also a musician, and so he's in a couple bands and they have a few projects going on. And so letting him do his thing is so healthy. And I think we can, especially early on in marriage, we can get very wrapped up in, obviously, the personality thing, but we easily can get wrapped up into, let's do everything together, and this is so
everything. Yes.
But it is healthy. Boundaries are very, very healthy. Balance is very, very healthy. So I'm glad that you were able to give some insight into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, it's just like it's as I get older, this is funny, I just have found you become hopefully less selfish, right? So less self-centered, less focused on the I as opposed to the we. And that especially becomes true when you have a child, because no longer is your world your own. You know, if you're married to a great spouse, you can say, hey babe, I need a night to myself. Like I need to go out with the girls and like give them pretty little notice and they're usually okay. You can't do that with a little girl who needs you every, you know, almost all day, every night. And so it's just, I think that's also a beautiful representation of Christ and how he loves us. And, you know, that transformation as a child and as a young adult, you become very self-centered, very about the self. And as you get older, it's a beautiful transformation into being about others and, you know, seeing what living a Christ-like life is really about.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Okay, so you had talked about you already were dancing, you knew some of the language. Um, what's something you learned about his culture or about him that you have loved since being married? Whether it be more of the language, whether it be something, you know, a way that his family does something, what's something that you've learned since being married that you've loved?
One thing I do love, and I love about him and his family, is just more of a sense of like, come as you are. You don't have to perform to be loved and accepted as you are. And I think for me, I have such a, you know, I want to do well all the time and be perceived, like part of my personality is I want to be perceived as doing well, you know, and being at a certain level. And if I'm not, it's hard on me. And I'm trying to learn to be better with that. But to be perceived as less than this certain standard of shining success it's hard on me. I don't like that. And in his family and in my husband specifically, you don't have to perform to earn our love or our acceptance. We love who you are as a person. And that's not something they necessarily said, but it's just, that's how they treat me and how he's always treated me. So there's a sense of, and this is really essential for a healthy marriage, is a sense of safety for me to let down my guard. And I don't have to work so hard to earn or be enough. And so that is something that I absolutely love. Not that, and you know, I know, not that I feel like other people aren't as accepting or loving. Like, you know, my family, I definitely feel loved and supported as well. But I think with him, especially, it's just, that's the way, you know, it just feels very, very safe with him.
That's beautiful. And like you said, that's so much like Christ.
Yeah.
And not to get too spiritual, but I just think it's so natural for me. But I just think that what I've learned from this culture and how they treat people because of the inclusivity, it's so much like Jesus.
It is. It's inclusivity and it's generosity without expectation, right? So
Without
it's not
strings
like you owe me, huh?
Yeah, it's the same without strings attached.
Yes. And it's so funny. It's, you know, here's another example. Like, you know, I'll ask, like, when we visit his mother and my, his stepfather-in-law, you know, if I ask them to go pick something up, if I can't get to the store, I need something, they'll pick it up and then they won't let me pay for it. I will try to insist. That's another thing, is like with my family, you know, we all just want to make sure we're taking care of each other. And that's just the culture of my family, is, you know, making sure your finances and everything else, which is totally fine. And, you know, that's more comfortable for me. So they're like, don't pay for it, you know, but, you know, it's incredible. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
So
Okay, so you mentioned something from the store. I'm very curious. Have you learned to cook any cultural dishes? And if
I
so,
have.
was it hard for you to learn, or were you already cooking?
So I'm self-admittedly, I'm not the world's most creative chef. Does that make sense? So it's not something like I'm like, ooh, let me cook a 5-course meal. I'm like a girl that throws the protein in the crock pot and lets it cook and put some veggies and we're good. Um, but I learned to cook for my husband. I learned how to cook tallarines verdes, which are basically pesto noodles with steak, and that's really good. And it's like basil and it's delicious. And then I also know how to make tallarines verdes, which is kind of like a steak stir fry with the French fries on top. They have to be the special type of potatoes though that you usually can't get in the stores in Missouri because we don't have sometimes diverse enough stores. what were the kinds of foods? You have to go to the special kind of store for that. But there are some, but I live in a very like suburb type part of Missouri, and these kind of stores are going to be by the city, obviously, where you have more of a diverse Latino population. So anyways, yeah, I know how to make those two things with the recipes, of course, from my mother-in-law.
Good for you. And isn't that so helpful that they're like, because I don't know if your mother-in-law is the same, where she really, and she has two boys, where she obviously cherishes her sons. My husband is the first, and he is so close to his mom. So I think there is maybe the stereotypical part that you mentioned with, well, maybe you didn't mention, but there's the stereotypical part where the mamas really love to care for their children, and specifically their boys, and with food and always serving, making sure they're fed well. And so stepping into it, maybe for me, I think there was a bit of and I didn't know right away, but some of this expectation of, okay, you're going to take this on and serve my son well and feed my son well. And so now that there was a little bit of pressure, because I grew up with my mom making a lot of things, but I hadn't stepped out. We kind of made the same things growing up. So I hadn't really stepped out and tried new things. Like you said, kind of the more, not that it's bland, but I hadn't tried a whole bunch of new recipes. But now that I have, it's so fun. It's so exciting. And I'm like, yes, I finally like mastered Mexican rice, like Spanish rice. We got this.
Good job. No, that's good. Yeah. No, I don't, the funny thing is my mother-in-law and myself and my mom, for example, all three of us are really pretty health conscious. So we're all pretty much into eating really healthy food unless it's for like a special occasion. And so my cooking, because I have to eat a certain way to maintain my health and my and now after having a baby, I want to I want to make sure everything inside and out is in tip top shape, and so I feel like we're kind of an anomaly because all three of us are really into like like eating as healthy as possible, but for special occasions, yes, definitely you want to cook. So like for get-togethers or birthdays and things like that. So I feel like there wasn't. I knew going into my marriage, I was very honest. I was like, I'm not the woman that's going to cook a big, huge dinner every day. There's going to be healthy food. There will always be healthy food, but it's not going to I'm not going to spend 2 hours on dinner every night. That's just not who I am, not what I enjoy. And if that's what you expect, you're probably not the right person for you. But that's, and not that I won't spend those 2 hours, but it's usually when we have company. So that's and he's totally fine with that. So he knew that from the beginning.
Well, good. That's great that he knew that expectation, and he was able to walk into that with understanding. And that's so huge. Communication is key in marriage, and having those expectations vocalized so that we don't have unmet expectations. That's really, really good.
Oh, 100%. I think women are, so I work with a bunch of engineers, and I love my engineers and I work with, and a lot of them are male, and they're all like, if women would just tell us what they want, it'd be so much easier. I'm like, I think that's one thing I would say to a lot of women is, don't expect everyone to cater to you, and don't expect everyone to just understand what you need. You have to be able to vocalize your expectations and what you prefer, and not in a whiny way. So before you get angry and before you get passive aggressive, express what you want, and then be willing to compromise and work on it with your partner, as long as it's a healthy compromise, right? I'm not talking about compromising your morals or the values that are the most important to you to do things that are unethical or make you uncomfortable, but you need to be able, do not expect anybody to cater to you without, no one owes you a thing. And so I've seen that so many times with so many different women, is that they're like, men are terrible, or, why doesn't anyone get what I want? And it's a sense of love entitlement. It's like, you're not entitled to anything. Like you need to be able to talk about it and compromise and work it out together, and don't have this attitude of it's all about me. So.
Very, very good. I feel like that could be it. But my last question for you is, what is the biggest piece of advice that you want to leave with other couples that are in interracial relationships?
Oh, the biggest piece of advice, there's like 10 things I could say, but I think a lot of people will say communicate, which is very important, but I think it's an attitude of grace. Always understanding that, or trying to come in with a mindset of everyone usually has the best intentions, even if it comes off completely wrong to you. but people never in their mind are trying to potentially be wrong or evil or do something hurtful. And so if you always go into a situation, whether it's with your spouse, your in-laws, with your own family, with coworkers, anybody, you go in with an attitude of they have the best intentions and I just need to express to them how maybe it's coming across to me so we can work on the best solution together. That's going to win 9 times out of 10. You're going to get to a much better solution. You're not going to get in a fighting match. You're not going to be offended, because there's nothing that kills a relationship faster than a grudge, right? Or unspoken, like, gross stuff that's held inside. I would say, having an attitude of grace, because no one's perfect.
That is so true. And it's a big deal, and that models Christ as well.
Yeah,
We have to have grace to make things work, or else, like I said before, those unmet expectations can get in the way.
absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Rebecca. I appreciate your vulnerability. I appreciate all your insight. I know I am taking so much away from this. I feel very similar to you. And so just getting to hear the things that you're working on in marriage and on yourself, and letting God come in and strengthen you. But then the ways that you're just amazing. You're an amazing mom and wife. And
Thank you.
I'm excited personally to learn from you, and how other wives can learn as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. I think, for so many years of my life, I was always trying to rush towards my goal or my, check the box. And I really learned, I'm almost 30, I'm 29. You learn to sit and be okay with the imperfection or the process of becoming better. And because what's the point of being perfect? Because there's nothing else to work on. So it's okay not to be perfect. It's okay not to have the perfect relationship. I think we all get so hooked up in our phones and social media and what's going on, and comparing. That's a human thing, but it's exasperated by social media. That if you can get to a place where you're okay where you're at, but God's working on some stuff with you, it's going to be a much more peaceful journey.
Absolutely. Keep moving, keep checking, keep learning and working at it. That's why it's masterpiece marriage. It's a work of art. That's what
Yeah.
masterpiece means, is we're always working at it. God makes it beautiful. God makes it happen, but we have to put our work into it.
Yeah. And masterpieces don't happen in 3-5 years. It takes 40, 50 years. It's a lifetime. And so, you can always look at things through a critical lens of why isn't it this way, or I should be so much better. But true masterpieces take time. And for those of us who are not gifted with patience, hello, me, you got to be comfortable with sometimes that uncomfortable draft, or 5 drafts before you get to the final one. You just do.
That's great. So good. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. I appreciate you joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Jamie.